Hey retro gamers. Today on Smashing Bricks, we head back to 1989, but only in Japan, to gather 8 melodies and sing an alien into submission in Mother, aka Earthbound Beginnings, for the Famicom. Hey, welcome back to Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. This is episode 42. My name is Eddie Inzauto, and today I'm joined once again by recent Summer Games Fest attendee, Mr. Jason Fanelli.
Hey,
man.
How we doing? We're doing all right. We are doing okay. We're tired still a little bit. I do the red eyes from LA usually, the nonstop red eyes. So I got home. We're recording this on Wednesday as usual. I got home Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., slept almost 10 hours Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So now I'm feeling good, ready to talk about a very interesting NES RPG here with some weird ass stuff going on, but I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and a very interesting history as well as just what's in the game. It's just a really interesting topic, I think. The whole Earthbound saga is quite a story in gaming. So I think we should get right into it because there's kind of a lot. So this is Mother. It's called Mother, and recently it has been renamed Earthbound Beginnings because it finally made it to the West after a million years, but we'll get to the details of that a little bit later. Some people might know it as the Earthbound prototype or Earthbound Zero. What an adventure it was. Okay. So this game was originally released on the Famicom in Japan, as you would have heard in the intro, on July 27th, 1989. Developed by Ape Inc. and published by Nintendo, it is a Japanese RPG. We know what a Japanese RPG is, right? We go on an adventure, we walk around, we get into random battles. They are kind of first-person perspective, not much going on the screen. You see your enemies, you pick commands from a menu, it's turn-based, and we gather party members, we buy equipment, we level up, etc., etc. And it looks a lot like a Sunday comic.
Yeah, very Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, more so Dragon Quest, I guess, because the first-person perspective, but very, very much in that ilk of early turn-based RPGs. And it's the kind of game where you play it and you see the foundations of the games that were to come. Now I have not played a fan translation of Mother 3 yet, so I don't know how far these foundations go, but I have played Earthbound, and you can definitely see the beginnings in Earthbound Beginnings. It's pretty obvious, in a good way, and in some very weird ways, but you definitely see what they were going for here, and then where they would go in the future.
So before this podcast, had you experienced Earthbound Beginnings before, and what maybe was your experience with Earthbound on the Super Nintendo?
So this one I had not actually picked up before this podcast. And it took me a while to get into the original Earthbound too. My first playthrough of the original Earthbound was on the Wii U in 2013. That was the first time I had actually played through it, and I loved it. I thought the eccentricity, whatever that word is, again, my words fail me, was very endearing. I loved the pseudo narrative arc of the guy taking your picture and telling you to say fuzzy pickles, and then at the end in the credits you see all of those pictures that you've taken throughout the adventure. I thought that was an excellent surprise there. I loved that.
Yeah. A nice short-term nostalgia hit.
Exactly. And I thought it was very, very well done and worthy of all of its cult classic praise that it gets. I do not know why I missed this one. I guess I just had other things going on, but I did finally play it on the Switch as part of the Nintendo Classics offerings and the Nintendo Switch Online, which is a good place to do it. But again, that's my basic background on Earthbound and where that's just me. Oh, and Smash Brothers, because that's where everybody learned about Earthbound who didn't actually play it. That weird kid in the original Smash Brothers, who is that? And now he's, very, very well known.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you didn't play Earthbound until nearly 20 years after it came out.
That's correct.
And now you're playing this one nearly 40 years almost after
something like that
came out.
We're
getting close. 36. 36.
36, yeah.
So I realized that I am kind of a rarity in that I played Earthbound on the Super Nintendo almost immediately when it came out, because my friends George and Brian had this game, and I remember all of the advertising campaign for it in Nintendo Power and whatever, and there was the scratch and sniff, and they were like, this game stinks, and it had the claymation images. But that's Earthbound. I was a big fan, and I did hear of the quote-unquote Earthbound prototype when it first showed up on the old internet, and then saw that it was called Earthbound Zero. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I was interested, and I checked it out for like a few minutes, got into the first town. But like I do with most JRPGs, I started it and said, I'm going to come back to this later. And here we are.
Oops.
In 2025. That was probably around the year 1999 that I first saw it. And now here we are in 2025. And I finally played it beginning to end. So pretty intense. My first JRPG was probably in 1990. It was either Phantasy Star on the Master System or Dragon Warrior 1 on the NES, even though it came out earlier. I know it was 90 because that was around the time that Ninja Gaiden was on the shelves, and I returned Dragon Warrior to get Ninja Gaiden 2, not Ninja Gaiden 1. Anyway, so that's my experience with the franchise, and I loved Earthbound on the Super Nintendo, so I was really excited to see this as well. But as convoluted as we've kind of alluded to that this game's history was, we're going to get a little bit further into it. So I think a good thing to do is to like place it in time, right? For Japan, it came out, as I said, in 1989, and that means that Dragon Quest I had just hit the West as this game was hitting Japan. Dragon Quest I actually came out in 1986 in Japan and took 3 years to get over here. But Dragon Quest II and III were in 87 and 88, and Dragon Quest IV was in 1990. So this kind of split in between 3 and 4. And there's even a reference to the Dragon Quest series in the game. I don't know if it was in the American translation, if it was in the Earthbound Beginnings, or if it was just in the original, because there's been a lot of different translations of this game. But also Final Fantasy had a similar story. It was like one entry into the series behind Dragon Quest, where 1 and 2 came out in December 87 and December 88. So people were really playing Final Fantasy 2 at the time that Mother would have come out in Japan. And then Final Fantasy 3 came out in 1990. As for what Nintendo was doing, since they were the publisher of Mother / Earthbound Beginnings, Super Mario Bros. 3 came out in late 1988, so people were all about that. And Tetris on the Game Boy was in 89. And actually, the Game Boy just came out and was doing really well at that time, particularly in Japan. They loved that thing. So in that year, Final Fantasy 2 and Tetris were like the big critically acclaimed games.
Interesting.
This game was the brainchild of Mr. Shigesato Itoi. Now, this guy, do you know about this guy? Like, that he was like a celebrity?
I didn't realize that he was a celebrity in Japan before writing it, but I do know that his personality basically fits the weird style of Earthbound. I do remember that. I just remember him being a very eccentric, very strange person, but in a good, endearing way.
This is from what interviews you've read,
interviews, internet
or like his
stuff.
website.
Yeah. Just from stuff that I've gathered from other people. He was just a very interesting character in the world of game design. But yeah, he was like a movie star or some sort of like films before writing this.
Yeah.
He also he was a voice in something.
Mm-hmm. He voiced the dad in My Neighbor Totoro for Studio Ghibli in wild. Japan. I couldn't believe it. I just learned this 2 days ago. But he had been in a couple of other little shows and like a TV shows and film before this game, and then many more after this. And a lot of them were as himself.
Yeah.
Because he kind of, however he got famous, his main thing was he was an advertising copywriter and kind of was like a breakout hit at advertising in Japan. Like that's a thing, apparently. And wow, that's how this guy became well known, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe it was Totoro. I don't know what was like the main thing that he was famous for, but he was a fan of the Dragon Quest series, and he kind of wanted to make an RPG, but he wasn't into the medieval setting so much. He didn't know a lot about it. So he's like, oh, I'll make a modern RPG. And after publicly defending video games on a talk show, Hiroshi Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo at the time, looked to have him come to Nintendo to work on an advertising campaign for one of their Famicom Disk System games.
I would love to know what game that was.
Okay, so that game was Nakayama Miho no Tokimeki High School.
God bless you.
Big game.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, an adventure game developed by Square and Nintendo R&D 1, published exclusively in Japan for the FDS, the Famicom Disk System.
Very strange.
It's a dating sim game. Designed by Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Sure.
What? And Yoshio Sakamoto, who co-created Metroid, if people need that. And the music was composed by Nobuo Uematsu.
What was
this game? Well, that's going to be a game that we have to play on Smashing Bricks. Apparently.
Just to say that we did.
Wow.
That's wild.
Okay, so this is what he came to Nintendo for, was to do the ad work for that game. Now he's in the door. He sets up a pitch with Miyamoto. He's like, I'm here. I got to make this game now. Miyamoto was indifferent to him because he had little faith in, like, quote unquote celebrity game projects. And he stressed to Itoi that a lot of work needs to go into this. We need the people to make the game, where you can't just come up with this concept and not have the team in place. It's not like advertising. So he suggested simplifying the game. This sent Itoi home on the train crying.
Oh.
And later, Miyamoto called him and said they found a team for him and they would do it. So, okay. But the next time they met, Miyamoto brought documents from another game that was in development to kind of show him, like, listen, this is what's required. You got to bring a lot of effort to this. You have to write out all your notes. You got to do all this stuff. You got to be committed. Apparently, he was just very worried that he was not going to be in it, which couldn't be further from the truth, as we learned with Itoi. Yep. He's super into this. So he reduced his other workload for whatever else he was doing, TV, film, advertising, whatever he was doing. And he came in full on, committed, ready to rock, trying to prove himself. He surprised the team with his dedication, for being in it, for being part of the development and not being just like a name on the box. And Miyamoto was actually criticized internally for trusting him, and this kind of proved that Miyamoto's intuition on this guy, after being hesitant, was good. So he wanted to make this modern game. He wanted to draw more on popular culture. He said he wanted to make a game as if Steven Spielberg had made it. Okay, do you know where Mother came from? The title of the game?
I thought I believe it came from a John Lennon song, right?
Yeah, there was the John Lennon song, Mother, you had me, but I never had you, right? So this actually came kind of from Itoi's upbringing. His parents were divorced and his mother was not really in the picture.
Interesting.
And yeah, he had forbidden himself from using the word and now saw this as his opportunity to shout it through this game, which he revealed in an interview just last year. And that like when I first read that, I got kind of emotional about it. That's intense.
That is
and
pretty
it
intense.
Also combines with the word mothership.
Right.
So that's like both of those origins for that word, because mothership relates to the alien part of this game.
Yeah. It's a very interesting background, and it kind of, because there is a couple of mentions to mother and father, like that enemies, mom eyes and dad eyes in this game. So it makes sense that there might have been some family trauma that was leading these things on. So to hear this, it kind of fits the bill.
Yeah, definitely. Plus the fact that the mother and father of Ninten, our hero, are in the game. They play important roles. Same thing in Earthbound.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting to read. Development took 2 years, and it was conceptually unchanged from the initial pitch. So
Excellent.
Remember we said Miyamoto wanted him to simplify. Well, ultimately he didn't have to because of his dedication to the project. You know, he did the writing. He was in there working with them the whole time. And there we go. From this project, the company Ape Inc. was born, with Itoi installed as director. And this was made with the intention of getting new talent into the video game development sphere under Nintendo.
Makes sense. Yeah, if you trust this guy enough to make this game, finally, giving him his own studio makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Japan. Now we have, how did it get to America? Well, it didn't.
Not for a while, anyway.
It got here, I think, in 2015, right? Something like
for the first time.
That's a long time. They began localization in 1990. They renamed it Earthbound with a space in between. They did a whole revamp because they had to take out all religious iconography, all the blood. There were nipples on some of the robots.
No nipples.
Took out the cigarettes that some of the free the nipple that some of the enemies had. They took away references to violence and alcohol. There's a strip club being built in one of the towns that they took out. And they also removed some NPCs that were blatant ripoffs of Peanuts characters, like Pigpen. You know, there's one that walks around with dirt flying all around him.
Nice.
And there's one, what's her name? Lucy?
Yeah.
Lucy, the girl with the black hair, the bob.
Yep.
Yeah, so they altered that sprite. There was a sprite that looked just like her too.
That's fantastic.
And also in the original, the town names were named after holidays, like Halloween or Valentine, or it's kind of weird. I like the English translation names better. I played with the original names on what I played, which we'll got to talk about what we actually played. Okay, but here's the rest of the saga. So the game was scheduled for 1991, but it was canned because they thought that it would not be profitable. It was to be packaged with a soundtrack CD and an 80-page instruction booklet, and it had a large cartridge capacity, and the people of the West were not considered as interested in JRPGs. Plus, what came out in 1991, Jason?
What came out in 1991? The Super Nintendo.
Exactly. So close to the Super Nintendo. They were like, no, forget it. We're not going to waste our money on this. And they canned it, but it was pretty much done. And in 1998, this online group got a hold of the prototype that they had, the translated prototype. They dumped the ROM. they put it online, made it available. There's a whole saga with where the cartridge was, how they came to acquire it, blah, blah, blah. This guy bought it, sold it to this guy. This guy gave it to his friend. They like tried to bully the guy into giving it to them, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, they got this online in the name of game preservation, I suppose, or in the name of curiosity. And they made a few little edits. They changed the name to say Earthbound Zero. They changed a byte of code to make it run, and that made it trigger an anti-piracy screen. So they had to change it again to disable that. They re-released it a couple of times. And people thought, oh, it's fake. I remember this too. I remember like the atmosphere around this. Not that I was like super plugged in to the internet and like the message boards of the time.
The discourse.
But from what I did read, yeah, there were just people were like, well, I don't know if it's real. Yeah, maybe it's just a hack, blah, blah, blah. But it turned out it was real. And now it was out, available for the public to download and play. And it was translated. But anyway, it didn't come out for real until 2015 when it was Earthbound Beginnings on the Wii U, and then again in 2022 on the Switch. Even in 2003, when they released Mother 1 and 2 for the Game Boy Advance, it was yet again only in Japan.
Wild.
So, man, they just really didn't want to give us this.
No.
And an aside, Mother 3 is still not available.
Correct. Not officially,
US, right?
Not there. There are some fan translations out there, but it is not officially released in English in the West at all ever.
It's amazing how little faith they have in this franchise for the American audience. It's kind of like baffling.
It is a little weird.
Then I could understand, but now, like what? Anyway, in Japan, it was the 6th best-selling game in that year. In 1989, it sold 400,000 copies, which sounds like nothing now, but it was the 6th best-selling game in Japan.
That's pretty good. And
it was received well at the time. So we have some review scores, but they're different this time. So most of the reviews that are online and available for reference are from 2014, 15, or 2022. The only one that I know is from back then was the Famitsu score, which was 31 out of 40, which is good. It's like their silver award. And then you have kind of a mix of scores when people went back to look at it, 20, 30 years later, whatever it was. So we had Game Informer with a 9, IGN with a 6.5, Nintendo Life with an 8 out of 10, Nintendo World Report 7.5, RPG Fan 75. The things that were derided, let's say, are the difficulty and the balance.
Sure.
Those are like the main complaints about the game that brought it down from, a higher rating on the ones that did not rate it so highly. Anyway, that's the history. That was as brief as I could be on a game with this sort of a history, and I promised a history lesson to people in Discord, so there you have it. But that's what everybody thought of it. But what did we think of it? Because we played this game. All right, so you played which one?
I played the Switch one.
Switch. Earthbound Beginnings on the Switch, released in 2022.
Yes.
For the American audience. And I don't even know which translation that is, because, as I said, there were all these different ones, and I could elaborate.
I'm pretty sure it's a port of the Wii U one. They just put it in the Nintendo section of the Switch Online.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure
the Wii U one,
yeah,
I don't know, I think is maybe the original Earthbound Zero, the one that was already translated by the Nintendo team, I think. What I played, well, I started with Earthbound Beginnings, and then I decided to switch over to the tomato translation of Mother 1 and 2 for Game Boy Advance, because this translation was done by someone who was better at making a translation than the official one, according to everyone on the internet. So it maintains a lot of the original intention of the script, of the humor, of the references. So I saw a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have seen, i.e. like that strip club in that one town. And other things. Like it has the crows, they're smoking cigarettes, the gang members have knives out. Like it's a little bit more adult. It's less sanitized, I would say.
Sure. Okay.
But it also has a very important element that made the game much more bearable for me, and that is a thing called the Easy Ring, where it's an item that is automatically given to you. Well, you pick it up in a gift box in Nintendo's room at the beginning, and you equip it. It takes up an item slot, but it also increases your experience points that you earn from enemies by a lot. It increases the money you get from enemies by a lot. It supposedly decreases the encounter rate, but the encounter rate was still through the freaking roof for me anyway, which we'll get to. But that's what I played, and I played all the way through. You said that you played about like halfway through.
Yeah.
So that's where we're coming from. Okay. So how did this strike you in comparison to other RPGs of this vintage off the bat, as far as like the game structure, how it was organized, how you played it? Did it feel normal? Did it feel different? Was there anything that really stuck out in your mind off the bat?
It seemed a little bit like it was lacking direction, right? I feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm wandering around these towns. I love the names too, the new names. Podunk. That's great.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. But I felt like I was just kind of moseying around these towns, not exactly sure what I was supposed to do. And if I found what I was supposed to be doing, then I got there. There it was. I did it. Hooray. I figured it out. I wouldn't say I wasn't enjoying myself. Talking to all the different people in the towns is interesting. They all have interesting things to say, but I would have liked a little more of a obvious push in the direction I was supposed to go to. That may shorten the overall playing time, of course, if that part of the charm is kind of just wandering around these towns. But I could see where someone would be turned off by that. Would prefer to have some sort of specific, like, go here, talk to this person, do this thing. Not so much that it's linear, but that it's more focused.
Yeah. Yeah, I did find that it was kind of open. The world seemed very open. You could kind of like just wander around until you figured out which way to go. Like in the early part, there was at least one gated off point where you couldn't go past a certain point without triggering a certain event. But until there, you had a lot of different directions you can go, and you had to figure out which way to go. And as you said, what it seemed to be missing, a lot of games of this time, you were expected in RPGs to just literally talk to every single character sprite in the world, right? Yes. I played Dragon Quest 1 back when it came out, and that's what you had to. I mean, obviously, when I was that age, I couldn't get anywhere because it's a little opaque for a little kid. But knowing that that's how you play these games, okay, I got to talk to everybody. But in a lot of the games, there will be some element of conversation. There will be dialogue between you and, like, they'll pick out like a character who kind of gives you a little bit more, and you kind of have to interact with this person. You don't so much have to go around and find the right person to talk to, or like get tidbits here and there and put connect the dots and then say, oh, this is what I have to, this little like phrase in this sentence that this one character said is actually telling me that I have to go to this place. So I found the same thing. And particularly with the melodies, I know this is like a game spanning thing. You have to find these 8 melodies throughout the game. After you get to a certain point, you talk to a character who says, "Oh, I need you to find these 8 melodies because I need to remember them." First of all, you've already found maybe 3, but if you were me, you only found 2 and had to figure out where to go back to find the third one.
Yep.
And that is true for the majority of them. You kind of have to... In Earthbound, for example, you would get your melodies after a significant event. You would finish like a quote-unquote dungeon, you'd fight the boss, and beyond that would be a melody. It's a very common game structure with do the thing, get the reward. Here, they're just kind of placed
That's right.
in interesting places throughout the world, but things don't necessarily lead you there. For one, the one that I missed early on is from a singing monkey in the zoo. So you have to go to this zoo, and you come across the cages of all the animals, and one of them has a sign that says, "Oh, a singing monkey, but blah blah, he's not here, whatever, blah blah blah." So what you have to realize is, oh, singing monkey, I'm looking for melodies. This is obviously before you talk to the person who tells you to collect the melodies, but you have it in the interface that shows these are a bunch of music notes on the pause screen, so you're collecting them. But still, at that point, you haven't even been told that you're collecting melodies. You've collected 2 of them, maybe, because you can get them out of order too. You've collected maybe 1, maybe 2, but you've got to think, oh, he said singing. I don't know where this monkey is. So you continue through the zoo, you beat the boss, then the monkey's back in the cage, then you go back to him, then you get the melody from that one. And a lot of this stuff is like that. One later on is just in a cactus in the middle of the desert that you have to walk over to because you saw it on a flyover cutscene and it had a face on it. And that was supposed to spark your interest and say, oh, I wonder why that one has a face on it. Let me walk over there. Because I didn't have anybody tell me, oh, there's a cactus in the desert. Maybe I did. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't talk to the right NPC. Anyway, yeah, definitely somewhat aimless is kind of where I landed on that. And a lot of optional content as well.
Yeah. And you know where I think that really reared its ugly head was the dungeon structure of this game. They are brutal. They are I said I played about 5 or 6 hours of this game. I would probably say a good chunk of that was just wandering through a dungeon, not knowing where the hell I was going. And I'm trying to play this naturally.
Was it Duncan's Factory?
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible.
I hit Duncan's Factory. I was like, what?
Yeah, in Union
Holy
Station, you're talking right before Union Station, right? Right in that Union Station vicinity.
Like either you're using a guide or you're drawing it out.
Yeah, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to play this naturally so I could have the purest, quote unquote, purest experience playing this game, but absolutely not. In fact, I think my save is still there. I don't think I'm getting out of Duncan's Factory. He's just going to chill there for the rest of his life, as far as I'm concerned. But I kind of think that's a product of the time that it came out, right? Like they were still trying to find their best format with this turn-based RPG style. So I'm not surprised that dungeons were more complicated than the overworld, right? But some of them were just like, holy smokes, they really needed some direction. They really could have benefited from some trimming of the fat, some cutting down, so that, or even just some sort of environmental storytelling that says go this way or do this thing. Yeah. And then and I'd be a little more straightforward in what to do. But it's when you're playing retro games like that, back then people making the games didn't care how hard they were. They would grind you to dust and smile while they did it. So I'm not surprised.
It's so funny. I broke down and used a map for Duncan's Factory.
Fine. That's fair. If I had done that, I'd probably finish the game.
Yeah, that was the most labyrinthine of all the places in the game that I remember. Because it was just everything looked the same and it was just kind of random trying to figure out how to get there. And it would be very difficult to kind of track your progress because you're in this isometric, it's all pretty much isometric, but inside the factory, you've got the ladders going up and down. There are multiple levels. Some of them connect to the ones above and below, but then that level will end and you'd have to go like back down a ladder and over on the floor below and then up over on the other side. And it was a lot to kind of keep track of.
Yeah.
But they may have expected you to use a guide. There may have been a guide that was just available. Earthbound came with a guide in the US. So I'm not sure if this one did. But that was a thing that was a little bit more expected maybe at that time. And I don't know. That's just the way they did it. I think some of these things were actually simplified for Earthbound Beginnings, if I remember correctly. And or maybe not. Maybe Earthbound Beginnings was based on the original. I think it might have been Mother 1 and 2 that simplified the maps. But there was a little bit of understanding that these things were complicated when they kind of remade the games.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you mention that as one of the main things, because basically moments before I got to that part of the game, I had just written in my notes, overworld paths seem to be very straightforward with few, if any, branches. I was literally on my way to Duncan's factory.
Yeah.
Because I was traveling up there and I was like, oh, look, not there. I just go on the straight path. I don't have to worry about this. And then I got hit with that. I was like, Jeez.
Yeah, they really were like, yeah, you thought, didn't you? You thought, and then no.
Yeah.
It beat the crap out of you, and in a good way.
And while you're traveling through this labyrinth, what's happening to you with this encounter rate?
Oh my God, the encounter rate in what's the name of the place in right after Podunk, Magicant, right?
Yes.
The encounter rate in Magicant specifically, what the hell were they thinking? It's like, there were times where I would take 2 steps. I was getting Zubat and Pokemon flashbacks. It was so bad. Like, what? Why? Yeah. Why would you do this?
There was a time that I took a step 4 times in a row. A step, 4 battles in a row. 4 steps, 4 battles.
Love it.
Like 4 tiles on the screen. 4, oh my God. And that's with the the easy ring in the Mother 1 and 2 translation. So I don't even know with the original. And I guess that's because you kind of needed that to be able to succeed in the game. You needed to fight tons and tons of battles to gain levels because the experience grind was intense in the original tooling of the experience system, right? Like, did you feel like you were underpowered a lot?
I did. I feel like a lot of the issues were, or why I guess I was having so much trouble in the dungeons wasn't just the, getting lost factor. It was I would run into I'd have like 3 encounters where I had no problem. I just breezed through. Mm-hmm. And then there'd be one. And sometimes it was even a monster I had just fought, right? But this particular one was really aggro or really, really upset with me for some reason and just pounded me. I don't understand how. Like what was it? Was it something in the port that was doing that? It sounds like it wasn't, because you were dealing with the same thing. What happened in the programming that made the game hate me? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So you feel like it was just like not balanced well, I guess, is what it sounds like, right?
It didn't do a very good job of saying right from the jump, you should not be here. And I think it would have wasted a lot less time if they had done that.
It was like the yes and of difficulty curves.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yes and.
Oh my goodness. And funny also is you didn't get there, but the final area, Mount Itoy, which was called Holy Lowly Mountain in the original.
Interesting.
Was so overly difficult that the general strategy is to just run all the time and not to use the run option in the menu, but to use the 4th dimensional slip spell or psionic power, which just lets you automatically escape from battle with a cost of whatever it is, like 13, 18 something psychic points. So you're wasting all your PP as you're going up the mountain to get away from these very overpowered enemies. Now, in my case, I was using the easy ring. I was still fighting at a heavy encounter rate, so I was pretty overleveled compared to what people suggest for the different areas. So I didn't have as much trouble, but that also kind of like sands off the edges of the game in a way, you know, like it's got to be, I feel like for an RPG, it's got to be somewhat challenging, but not frustrating. And the finding that might be difficult in general, and it clearly was difficult here.
Yep, for sure.
Now, how about the battles themselves? The enemies themselves? What did you think?
See, I love weird ass enemies. They had some of the goofiest enemies in these Earthbound games. Like there's an enemy. There's 3 different enemies in this game that are just a pair of eyes. Mm-hmm. That's so weird. You know what I mean? Like, and then there's this little. What the heck was his name? This little snail. Is it Magic Snail? Looks like he's got problems. There was one instead of just the eyes, it was a whole face. His name was Groucho. That's good stuff because it looked like a little Groucho Marx reference.
Groucho Marx
for people that actually remember that name. Like if I say Groucho Marx, you know what I'm talking about. Wasn't there in one fight earlier? There was just like a farmer with a pitchfork. Just weird stuff.
He was called Redneck in the Japanese version, and in the translation that I had, and his name was Wally.
Wally,
I think in yours, right?
Yep.
But that's one of those changes. Like, oh, we can't say redneck.
So yeah, we can't keep that. Much as fun as it would be, they can't keep that.
Can't offend people in the United States.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, there were a few other changes like that too. Yeah, items had different names, things like that. Speaking of items, wait, before we get there, the combat itself though, it was pretty standard.
Yep.
JRPG,
I think it was
right? Just fight.
Probably the most easily translated for modern gaming now to get into from back then, just because it was so. It was a turn-based RPG. It was a Final Fantasy. It was a Dragon Quest. If you for the current crowd, it was a Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Granted, there are ways that those games have iterated on the formula since then, but at its core, at its basic place, it was simply you attack, then they attack, then you attack, then they attack. You choose what you want to do. Maybe you use an item, use a special ability, something like that.
Not a whole lot of mechanics.
No, not at all. Typical stuff.
I'm fine with that. I like simple JRPGs. Like I said, I started with Dragon Quest and Phantasy Star. Very simple. But also, like, it's a tap the button. It even has an auto function. You click the auto and it lets them fight automatically.
Love that.
It also had the old JRPG problem. Not all the games had this, but some of them did, and some of them had it for kind of a long time, where in this game, you're giving your commands to your entire party, which can be up to 4 by the end of the game. And then they go through and do their actions, and so do the enemies. So if you choose an enemy with, say, like your third character to act, and the first 2 have killed off that enemy, that character will attack the empty space where the enemy used to be.
Yeah, it seems kind of mean.
Always so frustrating to me. Like, just hit the next one, please. Like, come on.
Really? Help us out here.
That's the way of introducing quote unquote strategy or tactics.
Yep.
But I don't know. Come on.
That's
just a little bit of planning. You just have to know, like, oh, I know that Nintendo does this much damage on average to this enemy, so he'll probably kill him. So let me aim at this next enemy instead. But I don't find that meaningful, really, as far as strategy.
It's not fun. It's just another layer of difficulty.
Yeah. What's good? What's some good stuff?
Just the weirdness of it all. Like I said, that's what makes this game so good to me. Just you never actually know what to expect. Like you never know what's happening. Never know what's going to come up. I also kind of like the puzzles that were told through dialogue. I had a couple of those that I ran into. I thought that was an interesting way to convey puzzles. You can't obviously get too complicated with them in this era. So to do it through speech, that made sense.
Yeah, like you would talk to a character and you had to choose the correct sequence of answers to their questions, or else you would be kicked out to the beginning of the conversation and have to try again.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I feel like that is almost like a critique of the genre, because I feel like some of this game is presented as a critique or a just satire of the genre, or at least just like holding up a mirror to it.
Yep.
So that's like saying, oh, you have to do some of this arbitrary stuff. Like particularly with the Nowhere Man at the end getting out a magic can. He's just standing in the doorway like, oh, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff to you. And you have to figure out the right number of things to say. And once you do, I'm just going to disappear. So I was here just to block the path for a minute.
Just to make you upset.
But I like that. That's cool. And I like the weirdness, like going into Magicant and you see cats swimming in the solid ground. Yeah. And then you have a lot of it is just the writing, Itoi's writing, essentially, like asking you questions. There are people who ask you philosophical things, and there's a lot of jokes, a lot of comedy, some like pop culture references,
some things that make you think, and in a good way, not in the how the hell am I going to get out of this dungeon way that we talked about earlier. This is the kind of stuff that I was into.
But at the same time, did you find it to be the equivalent of Earthbound?
No. This game or
like the writing, like those jokes, the comedy, the charm.
I don't think as much landed as Earthbound did, but I would say that again, just as with the entire game, you can sort of see the through line, like where Earthbound was going is definitely present here if you have that prior knowledge. There's a lot of evolutionary tissue here, or basis here, that Earthbound kind of perfected. You know what I'm saying? I was going to get into this when we get to the final
nice foundation.
Yeah, exactly. But without this, Earthbound wouldn't be as good. So it was a necessary thing. But having said that, it also, having played Earthbound first, I found myself more charmed there than I did here.
Yeah, you see it all come together in Earthbound. And that includes not only the story, but some of the mechanisms, some of the advancements, some of the this is possible on Super Nintendo where it wasn't on Nintendo.
Also true.
Earthbound you could see the enemies on screen. You could get the drop on them. You could automatically kill them. It had the rolling hit point meters when you're getting hurt, blah, 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 whatever. So it had a lot of updates. It had the item delivery service, which was so that was a thing. You have 8 item slots in this game for your character. How did you feel about that? Did it bother you? Did you find yourself like overwhelmed with items and have to travel all the way back to your house to talk to Nintendo's sister to drop items?
It was awful.
Yeah.
I guess I'm spoiled by modern systems.
Carry everything.
Yes, or being over encumbered, and you just have to drop them right where you are. This system was not fun, man. Oh, it just it was one extra added hurdle that I didn't want to deal with, and that slow burn realization of, oh crap, I'm going to have to go back home and talk to my sister, aren't I? Yeah. Kind of filled you with a bit of dread.
Yeah,
it was not great.
I do love the thematic nature of these mechanisms, like. You go home to your house, you talk to your mom, you get your favorite meal that you put in the beginning of the game, just like Earthbound. Yeah. You get to sleep for free, you get your health back, you talk to your sister there, she'll save your items, blah, blah, blah. You want to save the game, you get on the phone, there are phones in every town, and you call your dad, and he saves the game, and he tells you, oh, I deposited money in your bank account. You have to go to the ATM to get your money out. Instead of just getting it from the enemies, they don't just drop it. You get it from your ATM because your dad put it in, and then you use that to buy your stuff. Although in this game, you have to have an ATM card in your inventory to use the ATM. So there goes one slot. So you really only have 7 slots. You in Earthbound, you could call your sister, you can call the delivery service or whatever it was to come pick up your items. In this one, you had to travel all the way back to the first town in the game and see her, things like that. You did have a teleport spell later on in the game, but just like in Earthbound, you needed a huge runway to actually do the teleport, because the teleport, you would cast the psionic and your whole party would start to run in a straight line, and if you bump into anything, you turn into a puff of like a cartoon lab experiment gone wrong, and you fail the spell, so you can't teleport.
Very weird. Very weird stuff.
So a lot of stuff that was like just a little bit too friction-full.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know? That is a good way to put it. It put up these roadblocks that created a lot of tonal dissonance with the player, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of, it made it so that it was almost like the game was going out of its way to be as difficult as possible just to spite you sometimes. And that sucked, but it's fine.
Which is kind of at odds with its presentation, right? With its production value. It seems like this is this modern adventure, a bunch of kids. It should be a little bit more accessible, but it was kind of like hardcore in a way. But you did have this world that was fun to explore. These different towns, there were different things going on in each one, and you had the story. But what was the story, Jason? Do you like? Did you know by the time you got to where you were? Because when I got to where you were, I didn't know what the story. I had the intro where it said, a long time ago, this couple disappeared. The man came back. And let's jump forward 80 years, and now you're a kid, and there's a poltergeist in your house. And then
I was kind of hoping you would tell me that there was a story towards the end, because
it does. It comes in at the very end. There's a story, like maybe not the very end, but toward the end, like the last quarter, you kind of get a lot more. But you go to all these different towns, kind of meeting the characters, seeing what's going on, exercising a haunted house,
as you do,
getting sick in a town, whatever it is, going through the desert, riding in this guy's tank, blah, blah, blah. And then you finally pick up the story way later. And it tells you, oh, this is what happened. This is why this is significant. And now, oh, wow, this is actually kind of emotional and good at the end, but it takes you forever to get there. And I don't know if I should like spoil the story, but yeah, so there is some emotional significance at the end, and it loops back around to these two people and their relationship to Nintendo and their relationship to the ultimate cause of all the weirdness happening in these towns.
Gotcha. Cool.
But I think like the moment-to-moment stuff, like what the weirdnesses are interesting. Like, oh, in this town, everyone's turning into zombies. In this town, everyone's turning into zombies. In this town, the thing's haunted. In this town, the adults are all abducted.
Which is weird, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of weird stuff, but you kind of get to each town, you deal with the thing, and then you're like, or you barely deal with the thing, and then you're like, okay, I'm peacing out. I'm moving on. I'm trying to go look for more melodies.
Just trying to find these songs, man.
And each one doesn't like tie in to the story. It just like, well, that was weird that happened.
Very disjointed, like, once again. There's that word again.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's like the music in this game. The music is very like very notable if you're familiar with Smash Brothers or even Earthbound, because like it's stuff that you've heard before, just in this weird like NES, like its origins sort of way. And like, ever since I've started playing the game again, I'll just get one of these songs randomly in my head, and I start bopping to it, and I'm like, oh, I'm still singing this song after
constantly. Same.
Like I'll just be sitting there doing something, I'll be like do 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 do, because the battle music, right? And I'm like, oh god. It's
that plays in every single battle.
Yeah. It just keeps happening.
But it's good music. If short, like the clips are short and they loop.
That is
now,
true.
the interesting thing about this is that I didn't say this earlier, but the soundtrack was composed by Keiichi Suzuki and Hirokazu Tanaka. Tanaka worked on Super Mario Land and Metroid, and Suzuki was just hired by Itoi, who was a musician, just a general musician, composer in many genres, who Itoi had worked with before. So he would write out the tunes musically, and then Tanaka programmed them in and made them video game. But you kind of can tell they have more of this originating outside of the video game space kind of sound to them.
Yeah.
Right? Don't they sound like something that was just made by just someone who is not strictly a video game guy?
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, what makes it so endearing or so notable. It doesn't sound like it, especially for the time. It definitely doesn't sound like any soundtracks that came out around that time, and this makes it even better. I really dig it. Yeah, I really like it, to the point where I might look it up and start listening to it while I'm just doing my work. Start jamming. It's something I think it's a really, really neat, definitely unique soundtrack. One of those soundtracks you could pick out from like, if you hear a bunch of different songs and there's this, and then one of these plays and you're like, you know what? I know what game that's from, because it has its own signature sound. It's very cool.
Just enough weirdness and charm.
That's right.
I like it. And the graphics too. The graphics and sound, I think, really are good. I mean, the graphics are not phenomenal, but again, it's 1989 on the Famicom. And they do have their own style, and they're interesting.
They're doing the best they can.
Colorful, right? Comic booky. Peanuts, right?
Peanuts.
One thing that really got to me, maybe didn't really get to me, but one thing that I noticed was that I didn't really know what the items would do, and I didn't realize there was a menu item in your menu that said, like, check this item, until later. So I was like, I don't know what each of these things do. But more so when I was going to buy them in the stores, I wouldn't want to spend the money. I'd be like, well, I don't know what any of this stuff does, whether it's going to be useful, because some of the items are kind of like joke items. They like don't do anything of any significance. And then other items are way too expensive for the regular balance of the money in the game, and you have to like go find them in other ways. So it'd be nice to like know what some of this stuff did. I don't know. I didn't read the manual, so I don't know if it had like, here's all the items and this is all what they do, but somehow I don't think it did.
I didn't have a manual to read, so that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds like we're ready to give our final thoughts. Just like at the end of every episode, we determine whether this game is worth playing or if it was worth revisiting, and if we would recommend it in 2025 and beyond. And if we would, and if it was, well, then it's a smash. And if it wasn't, or if we wouldn't, well, then it's more of a brick. So Jason, I'll let you go first. What do you think? Smash or brick?
I'm going to make a new term here. I'm going to make a brand new term for your show. I'm going to call it a smasterisk. And a smasterisk is a game that is good, but with caveats. And those caveats are, you have to have a lot of patience. And if you played Earthbound first, you can't go in expecting this to be of that quality. You have to understand this is the foundation of Earthbound. They were still working out the kinks, and a lot of those wrinkles that are in here are going to very much frustrate you. If you can get over that, then I think there's a charming little game to be had here. But if you can't, then it's a brick. So it's like it's as close to me saying push as I can without it being an actual push. It has its moments, it has its charms, but only the truly dedicated are going to get through it.
Okay. Interesting. That's a good call, I think. I'm going to just tack on to what you said. Yeah, for most of us who experienced Earthbound first and then wanted to go back and see where it started, I think that's a good person to be for this game. Someone who's already a fan to really enjoy it, because starting with this might not grab a person in 2025.
Right.
You might need that extra outside impetus to want to know. But it's important to know that, yeah, we got this game much later, but it came out 6 years earlier. So think about from 1989. This is like from Final Fantasy II to when Earthbound came out. That was like Final Fantasy VI. So the difference between Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy VI is what we're expecting between this and Earthbound. And honestly, I feel like there might be less difference here between the Earthbounds than there was in other franchises to give it a little pat on the back.
I would agree with that.
But ultimately, it does, to me, feel like a demake of Earthbound, like a demaster.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Earthbound demastered. That makes sense.
And I don't know that really is going to work for everybody. Like, I think there's value in it, but I don't think I could call it a smash. I could call it a curiosity, and I could say it's a fine game, and it was probably really good at the time of release. I think it was probably fantastic for where we were. But at this point, I'd say just go play Earthbound.
Right.
Just go play the Super Nintendo one. They really took all these prototype ideas, to use that term that was coined for the original ROM dump in the West, and they made it a really fully fledged game that, if you listen to the bonus round, you're going to find out, I think, is among the best. Spoilers.
Uh-oh.
But for now, I'm going to call this a brick, which means that Earthbound Beginnings, or Mother, or Earthbound Zero, is a question block, because we'll say that you gave it we'll say that you gave it a smash.
Sure.
And a smash-terisk. And I gave it a brick-teriks. And that means that it may or may not be worth revisiting. It's up to you to decide for this question block.
I believe the term for yours would be Aster Brick.
Oh, yeah. How did I miss that? That's exactly it. So a smash-terisk
and an Aster Brick.
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you, everybody, for listening and playing along. And please do tell your friends. Thank you, Jason, for attempting Duncan's factory.
Oh, God. You're welcome. The things I do for my friends.
Yes, thank you. If you are listening and you enjoy Smashing Bricks and you haven't done so yet, please go to your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, and leave us a rating and review. It's totally free. And I don't know if I said I was going to do this, but I thought I was going to do it, so I'm jumping in here during the edit to read off a 5-star review we got on Apple Podcasts. This was provided by Chris K. with the title, Another Great Retro Gaming Podcast. And it says, very professional sounding, insightful, and stays on topic! ! Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that, because I try to stay on topic, because those rambling podcasts that say a bunch of nothing in a really long amount of time kind of annoy me. So I hope everyone appreciates that too. Anyway, back to my regular outro. If you want to support the show monetarily and get some fun perks, head over to patreon.com/smashingbricks and become a patron for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of interesting things, including monthly bonus round episodes, which are awesome and come out at the end of every month. You can also get ongoing recognition on this show, like Tanuki level supporter Ms. Muso is getting right now. And if you're really nuts, you can buy your way onto the show, just like you can buy a gold card to get into the United States if you're a millionaire.
Yikes.
Smashing Bricks also has a Discord server for fans, which is a free text, voice, and video chat community. You can leave commentary on everything. You can talk about anything you want. Totally free. Get the app. Come on, talk to us. Pick out games you want to play, etc., etc. All our links can be found at links.smashingbricks.com. As for next episode, we will have the return of Mr. James Batchelor to play yet another RPG. This time it's a Western RPG that goes by the name of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
Interesting.
So get your hands on a copy, play along, send in your thoughts, and join us next time on Smashing Bricks. That wraps it up for today. I'm still Eddie Inzauto. That is Jason Fanelli. Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome, pal.
And until next time, may the nostalgia be with you. And I'm pointing like objection in Phoenix Wright as I'm saying this. For some reason, I just stuck my hand out. May the nostalgia be with you.